the dot. Hello everyone, today I am going to go over faces. Faces have such a huge impact on an artwork, as you probably already know, so that is why it is important for us to learn how to depict them the best that we can. For that, I've decided to pick out some of my old artworks and I'm going to paint over them and show you a few different techniques in making them look better. And hopefully, since these are of varying styles and my own skill level throughout the years, I hope that no matter what level you are, you're able to pick up something from my demonstrations. So for this artwork, I noticed that it doesn't really make sense in a 3D space, and for my style now, I definitely make my heads look much more 3D. Whereas this one, you can't really tell where the side of the face is compared to the rest of the head, but you can see so much of the side of the head that the face doesn't look correct. If this style was any more realistic, it would look incredibly wrong, but because it's so simple, I was able to get away with making it look like this. This is from 2016, by the way. So since that's the thing that sticks out to me the most right now, let's try to fix it. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to figure out where this face is going to be and the side of the head. I think this head is actually really big, so I'm going to cut it down a little bit. The fringe is really high up the head right now. The top of the fringe is actually supposed to be roughly the top of your forehead, and well, looking at my own VTuber, my forehead is actually pretty big under that fringe, but it's accentuated by the fact that these side pieces of hair, they're starting around this point instead of this point. It would look more natural if it came from the top of the head, because right now it just looks like a significant portion of the head is dedicated to the fringe. And if you look at just girl hairstyles, get to know them, that's generally not how people like their fringes to look. I'm going to change the angle of the hair strands. Make sure they're all coming from the new location, new point that I want them to be. I'm going to give the face a little more 3D, a little more dimension by moving the nose bridge out, moving the mouth upwards because the mouth is quite low. I'm going to try change it to a warmer color. And I don't like how out of control the eyes are. You can see the eye white. It's kind of coming out. You can't tell where the eye ends and where the skin starts, so it just looks a little messy. So I'm going to tidy that up and make sure it's more controlled. I also really like to add subtle details like eyelashes. When you're adding eyelashes, you want to be quite careful about the placement, and you can't just put them randomly and unevenly. They're just gonna look too much. You want to put them down as carefully as people do when they do their own makeup. Neither fix the lines on the fringe. And I think this pupil isn't looking where I want it to look. It's a bit extreme to the side of the face. So I'm gonna move it inwards and also the edge of the eye. I'm gonna angle this section a bit more as well. Since we're actually looking at it from an almost like a 3/4 view, I suppose, the eye shouldn't be going down so much. It needs to be more angled. For that same reason, the eyebrow actually starts closer to the nose than above the eye, and it tends to end before the eye ends at this point. At this angle, at least. I'm going to blend in the blush a little bit so it's less strong. Switch to the oil paintbrush just because it's a little softer than the G-Pen. But the G-Pen is good for just blocking in things when you don't want it to be affected by whatever is behind it, whatever you're drawing on top of. Whereas this oil pen kind of absorbs some of what's behind it. I don't want the hair to look like it's coming around, like from the back of her head to the front, so I'm going to cut through it with the neck. Lighten it a bit. Now it'll look like the hair is just this front section that's coming down. I'm gonna clean up the side of the face and the side of the eye a bit more, just so you can tell what exactly is going on over there. The head is actually looking a bit thin to me now. I think I erased too much of it. And I want the eye to the eyes to be a little further away from each other. The hair is also blending into the skin, so I'm going to just clarify a little where it starts and stops by putting some more line art and cleaning up the colors. So even though the original artwork, the style, you don't really have lips here, I'm going to imply a little bit of lip color. So that the mouth is still quite stylized and thin, but you can see a little bit of lip. I usually don't like the nose bridge to be too strong in this kind of stylization, so I'm going to make it a little more subtle and just defining the nose by the nostril area. As you can see, I've moved it much higher than before and more to the left so that it's actually sticking out. Adding a little bit of color into the eye. I find that it makes it look a little more interesting than just black. changing up the shapes of the hair to make them look a little more interesting. I find that this white space is a bit awkward. It's looking very vertical, like a rectangle, a little unnatural. So I decided to move the hair over a bit. I wanted to find the subtle shapes of the hair as well. So what do you call this? The hairline? No, not the hairline. Just where the parting is, the parting for the hair. And you can do that by showing the shape it makes on the edge, but also adding a line within the hair. I ended up moving the hair back inwards just so it feels a little more like the original piece. I think with this artwork in particular and fixing it up, the main thing that has improved the appeal of the face is my understanding of 3D form. So you can see here the face, the nose and the mouth in particular, I placed them down where I thought they would be instead of where I know they would be. I think that's the main difference here, since I didn't want to add too much extra things, as I wanted to show an example of keeping this simple style but still making some improvements. With the eyes, biggest difference is I tightened the coloring and shape, the line art, adding in small bits of details like the eyelashes, controlled detail, and making sure you can see the corners and the edges of the eye, and that the eye white isn't blending in with the skin color. Okay, I think I'll move on to the next one now. For this next one, I've actually put quite a bit of detail into the face. As you can see, the lips and the nose are defined. There's a bit of subtle shading under the eyebrows, and the makeup is a bit more obvious. But overall, the style is still quite flat. It's just the face that has these definitions, and I've got these stylized blush lines going across the cheeks. So how would I make this face more appealing? I'm gonna make what do you call this? The angle, the jawline, a little more defined. It was looking a little weak, as in kind of shaky and uneven, and also a bit low. The chin is not sticking out past the jaw much, and I want to make that angle a bit higher. But by doing so, I'm also going to move up the features slightly. I want to define the ends of the eye a little bit more. Right now they're very much just like this. I want to carve it out a bit so that you can see the different parts of the eye instead of just one line above and one line below. By thinning out her eyelids, I'm actually making the face more detailed and realistic, which means the level of detail for the entire face has been lifted a little bit. And thus her face looks a little tense because the eyelids are covering the top of her pupil less. So I'm going to try to bring that back by enlarging her pupils to make up for it. I want the double eyelid to be a little more controlled as well. So I'm going to redraw them in. And put back the eyelashes as well. Adding in some lighter parts to the eyelashes just so you can see how these eyelashes are angled on the eye. Don't want them to be completely black, so that you can tell there's a bit of a curve to them. And since this character is front facing, it's important to make sure the eyes are relatively even in size. and placement. Going to make the shadow of the eyes less warm and more gray so that you can tell the eye whites are white and not skin colored. I'm still going to keep this kind of makeup, this eyeshadow around her bottom lids and upper lids. And be a little more careful with how I place her bottom eyelashes. I think before I would have just kind of dotted them in, and it can look kind of messy unless your style is less detailed and there's more left up to the imagination. But because I am detailing the face so much, I need to be careful. I'm going to change the highlights as well. Before they were a bit random and maybe too sparkly. And I want to make it a little less saturated as well. So I'm putting in some grays to help. Right now her lips look a bit puckered, almost like making the duck face, but with her teeth showing. So I want to make her lips look a little more relaxed. By extending the edges outward. I'm also going to change up her hairstyle. This one kind of suffers from the same issue as the last one where I didn't understand hairlines at all. I don't know where fringes begin. You can't tell as well in this image just because the hairline is kind of subtle here, but you can see that I've put lines to go across like this, which is generally not how the hairline of a fringe would look. Not the hairline, the parting. So I'm going to fix that a little bit by moving the parting of the fringe back to the center of the face. I also don't quite like this kind of grassy fringe texture that I have going on here. I want to have a few partings that are a little more significant, that go up, just to show that the fringe isn't so dense. And remember to put in the eyebrows, since they're now visible. The highlights look a little small when I zoom out, so I'm going to make them a bit more obvious. And then change up the way the nose is shaded as well. And to add some soft curves to the neck to make it look a little more organic instead of just a straight cylinder going upwards. And putting the shading beneath the bottom lip back in. I think I want the lips to be a bit more colored. So I'm going to use the multiply and put it on and lower the opacity. Might make it a bit lighter. And brush it in around the eye makeup as well. Maybe even the blush. Making sure that the jawline is symmetrical. I zoom in and out a lot because I like looking at how the face is affecting the rest, like the image as a whole. I don't want to get too tunnel visioned into one thing that you can't even see when you're zoomed out, or is actually a detriment to the overall cohesiveness of the artwork. I think I want part of the eyes to be a bit brighter instead of so dark. I wanted to exaggerate the emotion a little bit as well, so just now I also made a few adjustments to all the parts of the face to try capture the emotion better. I made the mouth open area a little wider and the eyebrows a bit more tense by thinning out the ends and making the inside part of the eyebrow look more creased upwards. I think besides this, there's a lot of non-face things I'd like to fix with this image, but I think we can move on to the next one. I'm going to show you how the face looks before and after. I think that the main changes that I've put down here are I've captured the proportions and the structure of the face much better. The size of the mouth, the placement of the jaw and the neck. Along with the hair, once again, I just used to draw hair so chaotically. I've added a higher level of detail to the eyes and the eyelashes. This is due to my stylistic preferences nowadays. I like to have more detail in the face because I like the look of all these subtle adjustments that you can't see as well when you don't have that level of detail. As you see here, a lot of the bits of detail get kind of lost. Along with my understanding of expressing emotion, I think that the emotion that I intended for this piece is more accurate now. The face feels a bit more relaxed, but she's also shy and maybe a little anxious. Whereas here, she looks more stunned and a bit more stiff. Adding detail was not the only way that this artwork could have been improved. It is definitely a stylistic decision based on my own preferences. However, I think that even if I kept the style more simple, the improved understanding of face structure and placement and expression of emotion, these things would have all increased the appeal of this artwork regardless. I say that because I just want you to remember that it will not always look better just because you add more detail. Okay, I think we can move on. This will be the last one that I'm going to adjust. I'm actually hesitant to do this one because I feel that it looks pretty okay. This was from 2017. Isn't it funny how I think this artwork, no, this artwork, this was from 2016. This was from 2016 and this artwork was from 2017. I didn't suddenly get a lot better. It's just my stylization choices were different. In this artwork, I wanted to draw something simple, but I wasn't as good at drawing in a simpler style than I was at something more detailed. Anyway, let's get started. I think that for this artwork, if we just analyze a little bit first, something that contributes greatly to the appeal of this one is the lighting. So there's some really soft lighting coming down onto her face, and this really helps bring out the form, the shape of the face structure, the face structure is very stylized here. The jawline is kind of suffering from the same issue as this piece. It's very low, and her head is very big. And her face is quite squished down. The motion in the hair is really nice. And I like that the eyes are looking towards the camera, but I feel that they're not completely placed correctly to look exactly at the viewer, which I think was my intention, but I just didn't do it very well. So I'm going to try restructure her face a little bit, and we'll see how this goes. Want to make the face a little longer and move the jawline up. I feel like a face filter app right now, but manual face filter app. I definitely want the jaw to be more obvious. Liquify is a great tool, but it can be difficult to control. Because sometimes the result of liquefaction will look very liquefied, because generally when people draw, you have these confident strokes, and then suddenly if you liquefy it, you can just, even just a little bit, you can tell it's something happened here and it's shaky. So you want to be careful with Liquify. I'm gonna make the eyes just slightly smaller. I want to give the side of her face some bitter structure, since before it was kind of just diagonally going up. Actually, let me copy and paste this layer just so you guys can end up seeing the before and after. Where did I start? Here. Did I draw something? I feel like I did, but I kind of forgot. Anyway. I want to move the air down a bit. And give her more of a cheek and chin. Cheek, chin, and jaw. And again with the hair, I think I really struggled to understand hair back in the day. I want to make it more obvious that these strands are coming from they're coming out of the center of the head rather than here. So originally I had the air coming out a bit here, but I don't want that anymore. I like it, but I need the jawline to be more defined. I want to make her mouth a bit less pouty. I'm going to add a bit of shadow and also remove some, because I think the lighting and the shadow around the edges of her mouth are causing this poutiness. And the color of her lips as well. I think this piece already had pretty good composition and lighting, so mostly what I've changed is just the face structure. It is kind of subtle, but I think it makes a pretty big difference. Here's the before and here's the after. Faces can really make or break an illustration. It's something we find interesting enough on their own, and they attract attention even when it's not the focus. To enhance the face, there are many tools at our disposal. And these are the things that I want you to break down when you're looking at your own illustration or references. There's composition, posing, lighting, angle, perspective. These are kind of the same thing. Figuring out where the camera is shooting from. And also there's hairstyling, makeup, and expression. These are just some of the things that you can pay attention to individually and work on. I think it's a bit hard when you look at your image and there's just so much going on. How exactly do you make it better? I think it's easier when you think about each aspect individually. How can I make the posing better? How can the lighting make the face look nicer? Along with the angle and hairstyling, makeup, expression. I do want to note that you don't always want to draw a pretty face. It might not always be your intention. In a lot of my artworks, that has been the case. I enjoy trying to draw portraiture that makes a character look as nice as possible to my own taste. But do keep in mind that not every artwork needs to have the highest form of beauty in the face. In fact, it could even end up being distracting if it wasn't what you wanted people to focus on. Actually, quite similar to what a photographer would have to think about if they were shooting a portrait. Except instead of having actual lights or an actual model, you come up with a model and you make up the lighting circumstances. You have complete control, as opposed to having to set up a scene with things that exist in reality. Here are the exercises for faces. I want you to find multiple references, both stylized and realistic, so art and photography, with a focus on portraiture. And I want you to look through these and analyze. This is step 1. Analyze what do you like about each image. What contributes to the portrait's success? And these would be attributes that I covered earlier, such as pose, expression, lighting. Step 2 is to recreate it. So this is essentially doing a study of the artwork. And while you are doing a study of the artwork, I want you to pay attention to the attributes that you liked the most. How can you create the same effects? And remember the process that you go through to achieve the effects. Some of it can be deciphered through analysis. Some of it is a bit of trial and error. For example, if this were your reference, you can tell from this area of the neck that I use some sort of square brush with a texture on it. And in other areas, I've used a brush with some kind of round, opaque brush. You can look at your references this way to try and decipher how the artist ended up with their final result. Or if you're lucky and the artist has posted work in progresses before, then you can also look at those and get hints from their process. But even if you cannot find these, you can always trial and error. Try a bunch of things and see if you can get the same effect, or even better, a different effect that achieves a result that you like. A tip for doing studies is to go from big to small. If you want to have a background color for your study, you should put that down first, because it's going to have such a huge impact on the colors of the rest of the artwork, since everything is relative. Besides that, when it comes to getting the character proportions correct, you want to start by placing them down in the correct proportions and size and distance from each other. So you want to get the head down and the body down, and just make sure everything is looking proportional before going on to details. You can do this a multiple number of ways. Some people prefer to just sketch it out, Or some people like to use shapes to plan the body and the shoulders. Or you can just place down blobs of color. And you can see, oh yeah, this is roughly the size of the face, this is roughly the size of the hair, and then you go from there and detail. There's many ways to go about it, as long as you work from the largest shapes first. Another option is to look at the entire silhouette of the reference and compare it to the entire silhouette of your drawing, or you can just place down the shape of the entire silhouette, like so, and then you observe the reference and figure out where on this massive silhouette to cut into to create the shape of your character. Because it's easier to place one big shape correctly than all these details, right? If you start with small details, something that can get out of hand is you're gonna have an eye and then suddenly the entire face might just be way too long, but you won't notice because you're so tunnel visioned. There are some artists who are very good at just drawing the face straight away. Like, they don't need any guidelines, they just know where things are going to be. And you can reach that point after you draw so many faces that it's like second nature. You don't even need to think about it. You've drawn it 100 times and you can picture it on the canvas without having to have the guidelines. But until you get to that point, you need to learn the structure of the face through drawing them over and over. Let's talk just about faces for a moment. It's not the only way, but if you can draw a pretty face, that will help you immensely when it comes to growing on social media. If you don't understand how to capture beauty, or you don't trust your own judgments, well, just know that it is constantly changing. And the easy way to go about it is to just look at what is trending. What types of art styles, makeup, hairstyles, fashion, etc. are popular, and incorporate them into your work. Of course, people are also highly appreciative of unique and new ideas, but when it comes to starting out as an artist, it can be a very difficult path if you don't have a dedicated audience first. For the study, I'd recommend a maximum of 1 to 2 hours spent on it. And finally, the last step is step 3, apply. Use what you've learned to create a portrait of your character. So take the skills you've learned from the study and apply it to your own OC. Okay, that is it for the lesson on faces. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!